Hello and welcome to another Every Tuesday tutorial. In this week's tutorial, we're creating a flying paper airplane animation directly in Procreate. So what you see on screen is exactly what we're going to be creating together. The color palette is free as always. Just tap in the link in the video description and you can download and install it. We're only using one brush for this entire project, and that's my free mono white brush, and I'll leave a link in the video description to that as well. I'm going to start by creating a brand new canvas that's 1500 pixels by 1500 pixels at 300 DPI. I work in the display P3 color profile, but if you're on an older iPad and don't have access to that, then the default sRGB color profile is perfectly fine. Okay, I've got my canvas all ready to go, and the first thing we're going to do is establish a background color. So I'm just going to come over to my layers, hit background color, and we're going to be using this darker blue color. It's the second one in the second row. And the next thing we're going to do is draw our elements, and then we will begin animating everything. So first we're going to create that paper airplane, and I like drawing my paper airplane a little bit larger because we're going to shrink it down later, and then we're also going to be rotating it. And every time you rotate it, it's just something that happens with Procreate right now. Hopefully they fix it, but whenever you scale down and do numerous rotations, it starts getting a little pixelated. So if you want one in your reserves that you can grab later on and reduce the size of, you'll have it there if you ever want to switch it out if things are getting too deteriorated as you move along. We're going to start by creating our paper airplane first, so we'll begin with the base. And we're going to start with our medium pink color right here for the center part of our airplane. And I've got my mono white brush selected. Once again, that's a free brush and it's right in the video description. And we're going to draw out a long, skinny triangle. And if you hold it, it will snap into place in Procreate. Let me make sure that this is connected. Fill this with color, and now we're going to draw our wings. So create a brand new layer right above it, grab the light pink color, and the first wing is going to come out from the top point and then connect to this back point, and then follow along the same edge. And now we're going to come to about halfway into the base right here and draw your line back. And now we're going to kind of follow that same outstretched angle right there, and then close it up. And now we just need to add in that extra paper flap right underneath, so it's going to be the darker pink. So create a brand new layer right underneath the wings. So I'm going to tap on the first triangle layer, create a new layer right above it, and then grab our dark pink color. Okay, now we have a paper airplane. So I'm going to group all of these layers together, toggle it up, label this one paper airplane. And now what we want to do is flatten this, that way we can reuse it over and over again as we work through our animation. So I'm going to duplicate this group, so slide it over to the left, hit duplicate. We're going to turn off the visibility of this one. This one's just here if we ever need it in the future, but we don't have any plans to use it right now. And we're going to flatten this one. So tap on the layer thumbnail and choose flatten. The next thing we're going to do is create the path that our paper airplane is going to fly along. So I'm going to toggle off the visibility of our airplane. Let me just label this one airplane. So turn off the visibility of the layer and create a brand new layer right above it. And I'm going to grab my light blue color for this. And you can create any shape path that you would like. Mine's just going to curl once. So it's going to start here, curl, and then go off the canvas. So that's going to be my path. So I can label this one path. So now we have everything we need to begin our animation. So in order to begin it, we're going to come over and open up our animation assist palette. So hit the wrench and then come to canvas and toggle on animation assist. So you can see down here we have the path, because that's the only layer that's turned on right now. If I turn on my airplane layer, you can see now I have an additional frame. These are your frames right down here. So every frame corresponds to a layer, unless you have a group of layers. If I have a group of layers, then the group appears as one frame, not three individual frames, because there are 3 layers in here. Anything that's grouped is its own frame. You can see I have 2 airplane layers now. So just a heads up about that. So in order to create our animation, we want this path to be ever present because we need to follow that path for our airplane, and then at the end we'll get rid of it, but that's just for our reference, so we have something for our airplane to fly along throughout the entire animation. So in order to keep that path around throughout our animation while we're creating it, we need to establish that as a foreground element. So if I come over to this frame, tap on the frame's thumbnail, and just toggle on foreground. And now this path will always be there as long as I have it visible. So at the very end, we will turn this off and we won't use it anymore. So we'll just toggle off the visibility and then we'll be good to go. So for our airplane, it's going to begin kind of off screen and then it's going to come on screen and then come all the way around. Anytime you put anything off of your canvas, it's going to crop that element. So temporarily we need 2 of these airplanes and they need to be the exact same size. So first I'm going to reduce the size of this airplane. I've got my uniform selected down here, so I'm scaling it proportionally. So now is a good time to establish how big you want this in your animations. So I look at scale in relationship to the size of my canvas and the path that it's flying along. And I think this can go just a little bit smaller. So I think that's pretty good, that's size. So now I'm going to grab a second one of these. So slide this over to the left and choose duplicate. And now I've got 2 of these airplanes and I'm going to use this one next. So I'm just going to toggle off the visibility of that one and keep this airplane for now. This one is going to be off screen, so it's just coming on screen. So I'm going to move it right over here. So this is where my animation is going to begin. It's starting and then it's going to come all the way around and up and off the screen. So now that I have that, that is my first frame of my animation. My next frame of my animation is going to take this second airplane and it's going to follow along the same route, only the entire airplane is going to show. That way I'm not cropping any part of it off. And while this one is flying, it's going to start creating a dotted line behind it. So what I need to do is start drawing in that dotted line, but my path is really, really bright right now, so I can reduce the opacity of that. That way I can see what I'm drawing on top of it. And you can see that this previous frame is still pretty dark. The opacity has been reduced, but it's still a lot stronger than I would like it to be. This is called an onion skin, and an onion skin just allows you to see what you've already done so your animation feels more consistent and smoother. And it's really helpful right here because I can see where I've already been. That way I can decide how far along I want to go for my next frame. But here it's too bright because I need to draw my little dotted line behind this airplane. So I'm going to reduce the onion skin opacity, and I can do that by just coming over here where my settings are for my animation and reduce the onion skin opacity. And I like coming down to like 30% for this, and you can also write it in here if you want. Everything else is fine. We're going to preview this animation once we get a few more frames going. But since I'm going to add on these dotted lines behind my airplane, I need to group it with those dotted lines. So whenever this airplane appears, those dotted lines appear in the same frame. And we talked before about anything that's in a group is on a single frame together. So I'm going to create a brand new layer and I'm going to group these 2 layers together. And this layer is going to go underneath the airplane because the airplane is producing these dotted lines, so they're going to be behind the airplane. So I'm just going to grab my airplane layer and drag it above this new layer. And I can label this one dashed. And the color of the dashed lines are going to be this lighter blue color. And I still have my mono white brush selected, and the size of it, I'm going to bring it down to 4%. I actually think I want this to be a little thicker. I'm going to come up to 6%. And just follow that same path line. Okay, so let's move on to our next frame. So in order to continue on with what we're doing, we're going to duplicate the group that we just created. So I'm going to slide it over to the left, choose duplicate, and now we have the exact same thing in the exact same position. We don't want to move our dashed lines. We want to keep them right there, but we do want to move the position of our paper airplane. So what you want to do is toggle down this group, grab your airplane and move it where you want it to go. So I'm going to move it up just a little bit, and you can see how much I've moved from the last one. So that onion skin is really helpful right here. And I'm going to rotate it so it's following along this already established path that we created. So I've got my airplane in position, and now I can come back to my dashed line layer. And once again, I still have my mono white brush selected in the light blue color, and I can just continue this dashed line right here. And now we're basically rinsing and repeating for this entire thing. I'm going to do a couple more frames and then we'll preview our animation, and then I'll speed everything up and then we'll be done. So I'm going to toggle up this group, duplicate it again, toggle it down, select your airplane, move the airplane into position, come to your dashed line layer, grab your brush and create those dashed lines right behind it, but don't overlap the plane itself. Same thing again. Duplicate your layer, toggle it down, grab your airplane, move it into position, add those dashed lines. Okay, let's preview our animation with what we've got so far. We can turn off our path up at the top because this isn't going to be part of our final animation. Let me toggle up this group too. So turn off the visibility of your path temporarily, and we're just going to see our plane swoop in with the dashed line following behind it. So if I hit play, the default setting is 15 frames per second, which is crazy fast. So I'm going to pause this, come over to your settings, and I like previewing when I don't have very many frames. I usually bring it down to like 6 frames per second, and that usually is a better speed for seeing how the animation is working. So if I hit play now, you can see it swooping right in. So it's working and behaving exactly as I want it. And as I get going and make that loop around up at the top and off the canvas, everything should still follow along smoothly, exactly as I anticipate it. I'm going to hit pause and we can continue on. So you can see wherever it paused, that's the frame that it's on. So it's corresponding to that group. And this was the last group that I was on. So if I toggle that on, now I'm right back where I was before I previewed it. I'm going to turn my path back on and I'm going to duplicate this group and keep doing the exact same thing that we were doing before. So I'm going to speed up the video and then I'll be back when this is all done and we can preview our final animation. Okay, I've completed the animation. Hopefully you saw at the end how I cropped it off from the edge, so it went all the way up and then off, and I still produced that dashed line at the end without the plane even being on the canvas. So it's really important that we have a very consistent all the way through feel with this animation. So now if we preview it at our 6 frames per second, it's going to feel a little bit slow, but at least we'll be able to see if everything's smooth, if everything's looking correct. So I'm going to hit play down here and we can watch it go up and around and off. And if we want to speed it up, we can also turn off the path. That way we can preview it without that path there anymore. You can see it's definitely too slow. So let's speed it up a little bit. We're going to come up to, let's see what 10 frames per second feels like. So 10 frames per second means that we're cycling through 10 of these frames per second. So that gives you an idea of speed depending on how many frames you got through your animation. So we can increase this even more. 15 is the default with Procreate. So I like how that feels. If I were to do it again, I probably would make the ending just a little bit quicker. It feels like it's slowing down just a little too much right there. But all in all, it's very consistent and it follows that path perfectly. So I'm going to hit pause. And now that we're ready to export this, just something to keep in mind. If you're planning to post this on Instagram, it has to be at least 3 seconds long in order for it to play. And you have to export it as an animated MP4. You cannot export an animated GIF and post it to Instagram and expect it to play. Instagram recognizes GIFs as still images, so you have to make sure you're exporting as an animated MP4 that is at least 3 seconds long. If your animation is not 3 seconds long, there's a few things you can do to lengthen the amount of time. The first thing would be reducing your frame speed. So over here in your settings, if you reduce your frames per second, that will make it a slower animation, but it'll be a longer animation so you can fulfill that 3 second minimum. You can also extend the length of time every single frame appears. So you can do that if you want to, at the very end, just have it completed and then kind of a pause before it plays again. If you tap on the little frame thumbnail, you can choose hold duration and say that you want to hold it for like 3 or 4 frames, and that will add on 3 or 4 frames to your complete animation. So then you can keep the same speed, but there's more frames, so that can lengthen your animation as well. So if I hit play right here, you can see at the very end, it's going to pause a little bit longer, and you can see those extra frames at the end that are just blank at the bottom. So that still feels really consistent to me. So I would probably leave those in just to get that extra little bit of time that's needed. And I can reduce my frames per second a little bit here too. I think 10 is too slow. Let's bump it up to 12 or 13. And if you want to know how fast your animation is, all you want to do is export it. So come up to your gear icon, hit share, and then down here you're going to choose animated MP4. Always choose max resolution even if you're posting it to the web, because the web ready one can deteriorate the quality of your animation. And max resolution just always looks so much crisper. So I'm going to leave that at max, and then you can export it and it's going to save it to your camera roll. So I'm going to choose Save Video, and that'll save it to my camera roll. And now if I go to my camera roll, now I'm in my camera roll, and you can see right here, it's telling me how long my animation is. And since I'm only at 2 seconds, I need to either reduce my frame rate or lengthen my animation by adding more frames. So now that I know that, I can go back into Procreate and make those fixes, export it again, and I can see how long it is right here before I try and post it to Instagram. And just remember, you have to hit that 3-second minimum. So that's how to create a flying paper airplane animation directly in Procreate. Once again, links to everything mentioned in this tutorial are right in the video description, including the free brush and the free color palette. For more on Procreate animations, check out my free course, Procreate 5X for Beginners. I'll leave a link in the video description to that as well. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit the like button, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you can be notified of new tutorials just like this one in the future. For more Procreate tutorials and freebies, head on over to my site, every-tuesday.com. You can also find me over on Instagram. My handle is everytuesday. If you try this out and post it there, I would love it if you tag me. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next week.